Deputy President Paul Mashatile is leading a roundtable discussion focused on enhancing the interface between political leadership and administrative governance. In fact, he's now speaking at that particular gathering. Let's listen in.
It's not a routine performance review. It serves as a sobering mirror held up to the state, revealing systemic vulnerabilities, institutional dysfunction, and a lack of protection for those entrusted to lead departments and drive delivery. We convene with the recognition that effective governance requires more than just good intentions. It demands functional systems, clear accountability, and seamless coordination between those who set policy and those who implement it. It tells us what many of us have known for a long time, but perhaps not fully addressed it. One of that is that high turnover amongst director generals and heads of departments erodes institutional memory, undermines policy continuity, and often dampens morale. Also, that political interference in administrative decisions across government and state-owned enterprises, particularly appointments, procurement, and financial management, creates a precarious environment, making even our most qualified professionals hesitant to serve or unable to act with integrity. Also, that performance management systems and legal frameworks often incentivize short-term salute compliance rather than long-term collaboration and innovation. And that career civil servants are being asked to carry constitutional mandates in spaces that lack stability, clarity, or professional respect. The net effect of all these institutional weaknesses erodes the trust of the people, undermines investor confidence, and compromises our standing in the international community as it perpetuates the perception of a failing state. The significance of today's engagements cannot be overstated as we progress in our commitment to establishing a capable and developmental state, which continues to be a key priority of the 7th administration. We believe that a capable and developmental state refers to a government that has the essential resources and skills to successfully execute policies that foster economic growth and enhance the well-being of its citizens. This requires a knowledgeable and effective public service, strong institutions, and a dedication to tackling the fundamental issues of poverty and inequality. Thus, a developmental, capable, and ethical state required skilled managers, especially DGs and HODs, with clear lines of authority and accountability to execute their duties in a way that achieves optimal outputs and agreed outcomes. This requires a political and administrative environment that is free from undue political interference, with effective systems and with a consistent and fair application of rules. Ladies and gentlemen, in South Africa, the urgency to enhance state capacity has never been more pressing. Our nation has made strides in the past, overcoming immense challenges to secure our democracy and pursue socio-economic progress. Yet, we acknowledge that there are areas where our state machinery still lags behind, hindering our ability to deliver on the promises of our Constitution. We acknowledge that our ability to deliver on the promises we have made to our citizens in the Medium-Term Development Plan and the National Development Plan 2030 rests fundamentally on the capacity, stability, and the professionalism of our public service. This makes it important that we address with urgency the foundational issues that have hampered our progress thus far. If we are honest with ourselves, we will all agree that tensions and instability in relationships at this interface clearly remain a matter of great concern for all respondents, both accounting officers and executive authorities. Without doubt, these problems are compounded by a history of apartheid and its lingering effects, corruptions, skills gaps, and a lack of accountability. However, the question of political and administrative interface continues to be a source of concern for a well-functioning government that provides services to citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, in the light of the fact that we are aware of the factors that are preventing us from making necessary interventions to obtain objectives that we have set out in our blueprint of a developmental state, achieving a developmental state at a rapid pace, we need to ask ourselves how we can effectively construct a capable state. A state that will ensure that citizens have access to basic services, a growing economy that creates jobs, and our youthful population that is inspired to build viable startups that can compete at the global level. None of this is abstract. The evaluation findings show that when interface is unstable, plans remain unfunded, policies are inconsistently applied, and citizens lose trust in the state. When directors generals are routinely removed or undermined, when procurement processes are politicized, or when coordination efforts fail due to poor design and mistrust, it is not just departments that suffer, it is the South African people. If we are serious about building a capable, developmental, and ethical state, we must recognize that reforming the interface is a precondition, not the afterthought. We must move from compliance to coherence, from fear to integrity, from institutional drift to decisive alignment. This calls, amongst others, that we revisit our institutional design to respond to government, or rather governance deficits that in certain instances manifest themselves through acts of corruption or malfeasance. The recently launched white paper on local government, which seeks to review the 1998 version, is one amongst the many interventions being undertaken by this administration. Equally, as government, we must deal with corruption which jeopardizes sustainable economic development, ethical principles, and justice. Corruption in both public and...
You're listening to the Deputy President in Paul Mashatile speaking in Pretoria. It's at a unique gathering, I should add, around essentially enhancing ways in which political leadership and administrative governance could have a better interaction. And the president is really drawing this down to ensuring that the country has or is a capable state. There's also, of course, a lot of commentary around security of tenure in the public service. In other words, if you want to attract the best to work in government, you must ensure that they'll be given space to do that work. We'll continue listening into that particular address from the Deputy President in Pretoria, get you a sense of perhaps whether there are any tangible outcomes from that gathering.